This is Pastor Daniel Stevenson. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different. I'm pastor of New Heights Fellowship Baptist Church, and New Heights has some kind of unique history to it, and I wanted to kind of share some of that with you. So, it's a picture of how God has been working in beginning this young church, but I know for some of you, you're maybe dialing in from across the nation, or you're watching these videos from who knows where, and you're not even close to Toledo, and so this at most would be a history lesson in history that's not your history, but it does kind of bring us to a point. That's why we have these videos. That's why we're teaching and growing. That's why the Life Station is doing what it's doing, and so on. And so I would encourage you to maybe listen to this video. It won't be more than 7 minutes long. We always try to limit them to 7 minutes if we can. And so I would encourage you to watch this video and kind of listen for some of the acts of God. So New Heights Fellowship began as a Southern Baptist church plant. Southern Baptist Convention is a national organization. Really, it's a worldwide organization of missions. It is not a denomination, despite the fact that it'll so often be said to be a denomination, but it really isn't. In fact, churches can even be part of two denominations if you call the Southern Baptist a denomination, because they can have their own denomination, and then they can join the Southern Baptist Convention. So you could be, I don't know, Lutheran or Methodist or Presbyterian or something, assuming you can agree to the Baptist faith and message, because that is a requirement of being Southern Baptist. And again, I get ahead of myself because we'll handle all that in another lesson, but the bottom line, it was a Southern Baptist church plant. And I met a man named Joe Ernstbiker. He was madly in love with the Lord. He was truly experiencing the joy of the Lord doing what he was doing. And what he was doing was planting churches throughout the Midwest. The Northwest Ohio Baptist Association, which is 9 counties, and Joe was serving as what's called a church planter catalyst. And so Joe asked me, as a young Christian, young man who had given his life over to the Lord and had committed to God, and I had said to God, I said, God, I'll preach the word in season, out of season. I'll always be ready. And so anytime you call me to preach, I'm always going to say yes. And so Joe came to me at East Toledo Baptist Church, which was where I got saved and was serving as a youth director. And he said, Pastor Dan, I'd like to know, or I'm sorry, Brother Dan, because I wasn't pastor then. He said, Brother Dan, I'd like you to come out to this little church plant I got going and preach and teach the gospel and the ramifications of the gospel on Sunday afternoons. And I just told God I would say yes anytime somebody asked, so I couldn't say no. And so I went, and so we started it there. We were eventually persecuted out of there. We were paying $40 a week to rent the space, and ultimately they told us we couldn't be there anymore. It was kind of a community space, but they told us we couldn't be there anymore. Those who were operating the building had kind of got wind of what was going on, and we were in the community, and we were winning people to Jesus, and we were encouraging people to be baptized and start following the Lord. And for whatever reason, that was working counter to their purposes, and so they said we couldn't be in there. Through the summer, we met in a gazebo outside, thinking we were eventually going to get back in there. And then that fell apart, and they said, no, you can't come back. And so then the church decided to go and meet in my home in Northwood, Ohio. So we met in the front room. We cleared all the furniture and set up chairs. And I don't have air conditioning. I never have had central air. And so it was hot in there. And we put way too many people in there. And I stood in what is now my kind of dining room area again. And I preached the gospel, and people sat in the chairs, and we sang praises to the Lord, and we sweat our butts off until it finally cooled down outside. And I remember the youth going up the stairs, and how awesome that was to see them. They were staggered step as they were listening to the gospel. And then when the kids went to their classes and so on, then there was a little more room, but there was still way too many people for being in the house. And so then we set up a room in the back area of my house, and we fit a little better out there, but it was egress wasn't really safe. I don't think the fire marshal would have liked it very much. And then we met in our backyard when we got to be too big, and then we went into Northwood High School. And then from Northwood High School, we knew we needed a stable location, and we had a place over here in East Toledo we were going to rent, but the landlord, we had a hard time getting it, and God moved it, got a lease, but then the landlord wouldn't do certain renovations to make the place habitable, and so ultimately that building got tore down, but not before we gave up on being in there. In the meantime, we met in what's called the Weber Building, which is a little mall down at Front and Main, and there it was like being in an old Michelangelo cathedral, because there was huge just acoustics and some amazing times of God as we were in there worshiping and giving the Lord the glory and preaching the word, and we saw some growth, and some people got baptized. And so, and then out of that, we were looking for a location, and the mall was letting us be in there on Sundays, and it pretty much wasn't open, and they gave us a key and alarm code and everything. It was an awesome time for God moving. And then we had to leave there because we'd overstayed our welcome. They'd only let us be there for a while, and the building that we were going to go in was falling through. So we went from there, and we actually went into a building on Main Street, which the little church plant almost split over that, but our deacon spoke up and said, I think we should pray about this. And then in a landslide vote, we wound up in the building on Main Street, expanded from there into 2 buildings. And then from there, the Lord provided the Hefner building, which is a 255 Hefner, where we are now. And I totally missed a period where we went from the house to Northwood High School for a year, which was really an incredible year setting everything up. And then we went to the Weber building, and then we went to Main Street, and then from Main Street we actually were in Northwood Baptist Church, the sister church that let us be at home there for a while we were trying to get the Hefner building ready, and then into there. And State Convention of Baptist Ohio, and a lot of people, Mississippi Baptist Convention and mission teams, really worked to do some amazing things to get us started in the Hefner building. So the first week that we met in the Hefner building, we met in one of the smaller rooms. We barely fit, but we had great worship, and we knew God had brought us home. On Main Street and everywhere else we'd ever been, we never had really anywhere for the kids to play, any classrooms for the kids, all that kind of thing. And here in the Hefner building, we had all of that. But man, there was a lot of work to do to get it renovated, and with the help of mission teams and with the help of Mississippi Baptist Convention and all that. And I'll tell you a little bit more in the next history video, but the bottom line is that's the early stages of New Heights history. We had people come and go, get saved, block parties. We had dozens of people getting saved at block parties, and even did lots of baptisms. And in fact, before we added 25 members, we baptized 500 people. And it was mostly people who were professing to be saved, and then they plugged into other churches. And so the old story is rising tide raises all boats. And so we really were impacting the kingdom in Toledo. And we know there's a lot of people out there like that, and that's what the early days were like. Block parties and mission work and walking the streets and knocking on doors and just serving the Lord. And wound up in the Hefner building, which I'll talk about more later. So that's history 1.